Okay, we're officially at 8:30. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome everyone here tonight. Before we get started, give you a couple of little quick tips. It's really important. Be mindful of this. Be respectful of the church. We have a great relationship with this church. In fact, did you see that food layout we have tonight? That was all donated by the church today. And they treat us really, really good. They just ask us, please be mindful of their property. Please don't smoke or leave butts. That's pretty much universal at any church you go to. Most people that go to church don't smoke. It's kind of, I can't see where that ties into life, but they just don't like our butts around. So be mindful of that, and be mindful of the bathrooms. Try not to make them too messy. What else can I tell you? It's really important to know that we have a Facebook group, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. And on that, you can stay connected. Not only this group and all the events and things that we put on each week, we put the flyers on there, the speakers. There's actually recorded talks on there that you can listen to. But there's also events going on all over in AA, in the tri-state area, sometimes up and down the East Coast. So if you've been in AA and you're bored or you can't, you're like, hey, just get on there and look at some of the things to do. Every night of the week there's something exciting to do in AA, so that's what we try to bring them there. Those conventions, those roundups, those workshops have been priceless for every single person that's actually attended them and taken those actions. So with that in mind, we also have a website. What else can I tell you about our group? And that pretty much gives you an idea of the speakers. You can look probably 6-8 months ahead and see that there. Our sister group is a big book study. We have flyers on the back table back there. If you have any flyers of any events coming up in AA or anything that you like to share with others, please put that there, or please post it in the group. It carries more mileage online. Okay, and like I said, our sister group is a big book study, and we meet every Thursday at Salem UCC Church, 186 East Court Street, at 7:30 p.m. on Thursday. And we go line by line in that big book. People tend to get free, happy. They have a really good time. I always tell people we go an hour and 10 minutes without a complaint and without any profanity, and that's pretty amazing in AA. We're all on that spiritual journey, so if that sounds appealing to you, come over and see us. Meanwhile, Nick's going to come up here and he's going to chair this meeting, and enjoy tonight.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street, at 8:30 in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. till 7:30 right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? Yes, sir.
I'm Mike from Alcoholic.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Darren, welcome.
I'm Bart, alcoholic.
Hey, Bart, welcome. Hey, Drew, welcome.
Paul, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Paul, welcome. Yes, sir.
Jonathan, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Jonathan, welcome. What's up, man? Hey, Rich, welcome. Yes, sir. Hey, Todd, welcome. All right. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Are there any announcements from the floor for the good of AA? We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see myself or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD donations. If you'd like a CD of any speaker, past or present, please see myself or Ron before or after the meeting. They are available free of charge. And with that, I've had Mustafa to come up and read the AA preamble.
Hi, I'm Mustafa and I'm an alcoholic. The AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve the common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I have asked Amanda to come up and read the 12 steps of recovery.
Hi, I'm Amanda, alcoholic. Thank you. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you.
We have a 7 tradition which states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, we pass around the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. Once again, there's absolutely no smoking on church property. Just walk across the street at either exit. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Which leads me to my speaker, comes to us on loan from the Red Hill Group. I've seen his presentation before, and it's a really cool thing. Myself, I like to learn the history of the program that saved my life. So with that, I welcome George R. from Red Hill.
My name's George, and I am an alcoholic. Hey, George. Give me a second. I'm going to see if my ex-wife is in here first. I don't see her. I have some interesting stuff up here. I have memorabilia. My sobriety date is December 25th, 1983. And it was Christmas Day. I didn't pick it. I didn't, look at a calendar and say, gee, I think I'll stop acting like this on Christmas Day. But it was a day it was over. I knew it was over. I was going to die if I continued down the path I was on. But over the years, I've picked up memorabilia. I developed an early interest in the history of AA that went beyond the big book. When I read the big book, I also wanted, and the 12 and 12, I wanted to learn, I wanted to go deeper. I wanted to read what the founders, the co-founders read. I wanted to learn what they learned from the sources that they used to develop the program. And I didn't set out to create a talk like this with the stuff I have up here. It's just things I picked up at yard sales, flea markets, and it kept me interested in recovery beyond just going to meetings and talking about the steps, and, which obviously is the foundation of our recovery. But so I have some interesting stuff up here. But first, I want to qualify myself. I grew up running the streets of Doylestown. It's been a while since I drove through town. It's been quite a few years, and man, it's uptown now, big time. It's upscale. I know every alley in this town. I blew up a toilet in the county theater in 11th grade. I graduated from Central Bucks West in 1971. We were the second graduating class out of West. They split the class, my junior class, and opened East. Now there's Central Bucks South. And actually, that was my paper route in Warrington when I was 11, 12 years old. But, whenever I hear the recordings of Bill Wilson sharing his story, he always starts with a description of what it was like. He addresses the fact that his father ran out on the family right up front, but he doesn't go into much detail about it. But he points to that as a reason that he felt inadequate. And, he goes into the psychology of how that possibly contributed to when he started drinking, that the drinking took off. When I share my story, I'm a big book thumper, and I don't apologize for it. I don't think that term should even exist. Either you're about that book or you're not. But when I first got sober, well, I'll just back it up. I grew up in an upper middle class family. There was a swimming pool in the backyard. I wasn't allowed to swim in it because if I was in the pool, that meant I wasn't working around the house. I have 5 sisters and a younger brother, a much younger brother. And, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She was a good woman. I was raised Catholic. Went to Catholic school up till 6th grade. I was an altar boy, a Boy Scout. I had a paper route. I caddied at the Warrington Country Club. I pumped gas at the Warrington Mobile. I wasn't allowed to play sports because I was told real men work after school. So as much as I loved sports, I wasn't allowed to participate. But in my neighborhood, there must have been 20 of us around the same age. It was the post-war baby boom. And, we could get a softball game going, both sides, in a heartbeat in the summer. It was a great neighborhood. I loved growing up there. But, I can remember the one guy, his parents got divorced. And it was, I was 12 or 13 years old, and I had no idea. I didn't know what that meant. I remember asking some of the other guys, well, where did his father go? I mean, is there like a place they go? Because he disappeared. He just was never there anymore. And, that was the first indication. In hindsight, I can see where, the split that the kids I was growing up with, where things were going to change. And John, whose father it was, he took a bad turn. Started drinking and smoking pot and getting into trouble in school. But I was faced with a fairly simple reality by 11th grade that I was going to probably get drafted and sent to Vietnam. And at that point, I didn't care. I didn't care about school. And the guys I decided to associate with in school made no demands of me. I didn't have to be a good student. I didn't have to be a good athlete. As long as I had a nice car and a black leather jacket and could roll the cigarettes up here. I started back talking teachers, started drinking in the student parking lot in the morning before school. And I liked it. I liked the effect right away. I can remember thinking, this must be what other people feel like all the time, only they don't have to drink. So, in short time, I figured that if 3 beers were good, 6 must be better. And I was cursed with the high tolerance right off the bat. And at 16, I could grow a cute, fuzzy little mustache, and I could get served in bars. And, if one bar carded me, I'd just hit 2 or 3 around town. And if nobody would sell me beer, there was always a drunk hanging around outside of the bars that for a couple of quarts of beer for him, we could get some beer. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I was drinking every day. And, liked it, no hangovers. My senior year in high school, I'm shocked to this day that I even graduated. I graduated 9 from the bottom of 347. And I can remember being disappointed because I thought I'd gotten a little lower than that. Seriously, I didn't care if I didn't graduate. I got caught 3 weeks before graduation for skipping 30-some days. And I was told that I probably wouldn't graduate. And I didn't care. And when the vice principal said, well, we have to call your parents. And I said, well, my father's got a bad heart. He'll probably beat me half to death and have a heart attack and die when he learns this. And I said, my mother's perpetually pregnant. In all likelihood, she'll have a miscarriage. So I swear to God, I just saw this paper the other day when I was straightening up my office. I came across my high school yearbook. The vice principal said, okay, your father has heart disease. Write a paper about heart disease. And we'll let this slide, we'll let you graduate. Well, I found that paper just yesterday, day before yesterday. I came across it and I had to laugh. One of my gifts, or a curse during my alcoholic days was I could talk my way out of just about anything. I think we all learned to con, lie, say whatever's necessary in order to avoid the consequences. And I always, as I started getting into trouble and faced with getting drafted, I realized I could pretty much talk my way out of anything. But it turns out I didn't get drafted. But then I didn't know what to do because I'd made no plans. I wasn't going to go to college. My grades were horrible. So in order to try and get my grades back up, or to get decent grades, my father sent me to prep school in Center City, Philadelphia. And I learned to drink Mad Dog 2020 at lunch. And one afternoon or one morning when I got off the train to go to school, the school was on fire. And I could say it wasn't me because I hadn't even checked into school yet. So that was the end of that. And at that point, I was 17, 18 years old. I had no idea of what the future was. What I knew was I liked to drink. So I drank. And I drank. I got tired of beer when I was 20 years old. And I can remember actually thinking, 32 ounces of beer, 32 ounces of gin. Simple choice. So I started drinking gin. And I kept a bottle of gin under the seat in my car, and I would drink it warm, and I'd swear to you, I'd take a pull on the bottle and go, yeah, boy, that's good. But it was horrible. It was horrible. And I could drink that quart of beer and still walk, or a quart of gin, still walk and talk. So obviously, bad sign. I hear these young kids in my neighborhood sometimes talking about, yeah, man, I can drink like crazy and it doesn't affect me. And I tell them, you may think that's a blessing now, but eventually it's going to cost you a lot of money and maybe jail time. And they laugh at me, which I would have done. You know, nobody ever corrected me. Nobody ever said to me, you drink too much or you shouldn't be doing that. You know, I've spent a couple overnights in town jails for drunk and disorderly. Wildwood did not like me. I would get drunk, get in fights in town, and, you know, spend the night in the North Wildwood police station. But I can usually talk my way out of things. I've never gotten a DUI. And I don't know how that's happened, you know. Yeah, get with me after the meeting and we'll share some amusing anecdotes. But, you know, they're worth chuckling over now, but they weren't funny at the time. When I was 23 years old, I knew a photographer. And he did commercial photography. And he used models for his ads. And one afternoon he called me and he said, stop over to the studio. And he said, can you come over now? He always had a jug of wine or something. So I said, yeah, I can come over. I went over and he said, what do you look like without that mustache and with a haircut? I said, I have no idea why. He said, because we booked a model to come in here and he hasn't shown up. He said, you're a similar type. He said, it's worth $200 to you. I shaved my mustache. You know? And there was a hairstylist, a hair and makeup over there. They cut my hair. By the time I was 23, I was working in Manhattan. I was with Wilhelmina in New York City, and this was the mid to late 70s. I don't see a whole lot of real old folks in here, but Studio 54, how many have heard of Studio 54? I heard that I was there a couple times. Too much money? Nah, too much time. And they told me cocaine wasn't addicting. And I had the money, but I drank. That was my primary focus. But then the hangovers started happening. And I started showing up late to some of the bookings. And I could make $4,000 in a week. I could make $4,000 in a day. But I never had any money. I was Mr. Big Time. Nice cars, nice clothes, jewelry. I had my shoes made. I don't know anybody else that can say that. How stupid was that? But I was out of control. And I worked my way to a point where I was on my way out of the business. And an agent called me in. I was 30 years old, and he said, "Party's over, pal." You know, I looked like hell. I was in bad shape. So I left New York, and I got an apartment in a place called Lansdale, and I had no idea where it even was. And I ended up driving a cab at nights. I just, honestly, God, a year before I'd been partying with the likes, and I'm not big on name dropping, but the extent I'd fallen was, I can remember partying at Warren Beatty at a party saying to me, "Which one would you do, George?" And a year later, I'm driving a cab in some place called Lansdale, and crying. I would cry. I was a mess. I was in tears. But one morning, I woke up in this apartment I was in, and it was Christmas Day. And I knew it was over. It had to stop. And I went to my parents. And I guess about a week before, I had stopped over at my mom's house. And I said, "Well, Mom, could you lend me $50? I need money to pay the rent." I was 30 years old, and it was the first time that woman ever said no. And I couldn't believe it. I could still see, the look on her face, a tear. She started crying. I was her pride and joy. She had the 5 daughters and me. And she was an amazing woman, but she said no. And within a week, the final cushion had been pulled out from under me, and I hit a bottom. And Christmas morning, I knew. So I went to Living Green. I was there 3 weeks. And, that's all the state would pay for. I went on welfare, where all the money I'd made was gone. And the state paid for my stay. They'd only pay for 3 weeks. And I'm telling you, somewhere in the second week, and I hear these 2 words all the time when people don't even realize the beginning of a spiritual awakening's taken hold. Something happened. I don't know what it was. I don't know exactly what it was that was said, but something was different, and I knew it. I could feel it. I mean, I'm getting the chills now every time I talk about it. That was the beginning of a spiritual awakening. And when I left Living Green after 3 weeks, I knew I was never going to drink again. But I would say I'm never, and I still say, I'm never going to drink or drug again, a day at a time. But I remember, anybody in here went to Living Green with Dr. Shanahan, who was still there? You were at Living Green, but Dr. Shanahan was the director. He had been a Catholic priest, medical doctor, college professor. He was published. And on my way out the door, I stopped and I said, I was terrified. I said, Dr. Shanahan, please tell me what, is there something I missed? Is there some magic words you can give me that'll give me some confidence walking out of here? He said to me, son, when you come to recognize that your liabilities can be turned into your greatest assets, you'll get it. And I looked at him, I said, what the hell does that mean? And over the years, Dr. Shanahan we became friends because he appreciated my perspective on things at times. But so I left Living Green, and 11 months later, I was suicidal. I was going to meetings. I was cleaning ashtrays. We used to have ashtrays. I was setting up, I was making coffee, I was doing all that stuff, but I was going to a step meeting on a regular basis, but I was clueless. I just thought, I feel better, I'm getting back in shape. Physically, I was back in shape. I started working out again. And I came apart. I called Living Green, and I explained the situation, and a woman on the phone said, please hold. I said, I'm suicidal. She said, please hold. And she did. She put me on hold, but she came right back and she said, do you have a car? And I said, yeah. She said, can you get to Doylestown? I said, yeah. She said, Aldi Foundation. They used to be down at the bottom of the hill over here. And I drove to Aldi Foundation. I met a counselor then. So I was only 11 months old, so that was 33 years ago. And I just talked to her the other night. And she's my friend now. First of all, when I met her the first time, I kid her about this. She's the same age as me. So at that time, she was 30, 31 years old. But I'm sitting in this room at Aldi Foundation. The door opens, and in comes this gorgeous Italian babe. I mean, she was absolutely beautiful. And I said, who are you? She said, I'm your counselor. And I was like, no, this ain't gonna work. But she's one of my best friends today. She doesn't even charge me anymore, so but I just went through a 7-year hell of a divorce. I filed for divorce. She didn't get it anymore. She wasn't working a program. She didn't have a drug or alcohol problem, but she had the isms, and it got bad, and it broke my heart. I still love the woman to death. But anyway, so I meet this counselor, and we deal with some of the other stuff. And within about a month, I met a guy. I don't know if anybody here knows. His name was Dave Heckman. He's dead, and he's been dead quite a while, but he was an incredible man. He didn't start drinking until he was 28. He was the third highest ranking naval officer to go into Hiroshima after the bombing. At his eulogy, he was the toughest, Bob, you remember Dave. He was the toughest little monkey. I mean, he was, I gave his eulogy, and I said he was 5 foot nothing and weighed about 100 and nothing, but God help you, man, if you were screwing around with the young girls that were just coming into the program. I saw him reach up and grab a guy by his collar and said, I will kick your butt up and down this street if you don't stop chasing these girls. This big boy, he was new in the program. He backed up and said, watch out, old man. There was like 5 of us were standing there and said, go ahead, hit the old man. You know? But Dave was a remarkable man. He had a garden out back of his house. He was retired. I'd sit with him, I'd smoke a cigar, he'd drink his coffee and smoke his cigarettes, and we'd talk. What we talked about was the big book, and he's the one who showed me how to work the steps in the big book. And he called people what they were in the program, and he said, this nonsense, step a year, and, I actually had some people early on tell me, all you talk about is that damn book. You're too sick to take the steps. I was like, that's like telling somebody who's a diabetic that's having an attack, I'll give you the insulin if you'll just stop thrashing around like that. But Dave took me through the steps. And it turns out Dave shook the hand of Bill Wilson at one point in his journey through life. He never married, but didn't start drinking until he was 28, but he got the program. He understood the program. Incredible man. And the other guy who saved my butt, Dave was Dave had a master's degree in business from the University of Pennsylvania, graduated at the top of his class. In order to get into the Naval Academy, he was 2 inches too short. His brother told me at the funeral that Dave would hang from a branch of a tree with a cinder block tied around his ankles to try and get the extra 2 inches. But what happened though was the war as it progressed, they needed more people, and they relaxed the requirements, and Dave got in. But he didn't drink throughout the war. When he got out of the service, with his master's degree in engineering, he was building oil drilling platforms around the world. And it was, I don't know if they still do it, but it was like 3 weeks on the platform and 1 week, on shore. So they were doing one like Venezuela or something, and he was drinking. And I remember he told me, he said, I came out of a blackout and I was in a jungle teaching some of these Spanish guys how to make bombs, and I didn't even know which side I was on. And he would tell these stories with a dead straight face. It's like, this is really what happened. But the flip side of that coin is Dave was this ultra intellectual man with vast worldwide experience. And I bumped into a guy, he was the head janitor at an office building in Lansdale. They called him Smiling Jack. He was a 3rd grade dropout from the hills of the mountains, back mountains of North Carolina. He did 2 years on a chain gang during the Depression when he got caught running corn whiskey. And he did the 2 years, but he came out of that experience very angry. He wasn't smiling. Became a merchant marine. And he traveled the world as a cook, as a merchant marine. And he never got more than 2 blocks from any port. I mean, he'd been to Russia, all around the world. Never got more than 2 blocks from the port because there was always a bar close by. He'd been shot, stabbed, shot at. I mean, he shot at people, stabbed people. He had a horrible life. He ended up in Lansdale. Here's this good old boy. I bumped into him in this office building. I was standing looking at the office directory in the lobby. I couldn't find, I was looking for an ad agency, a small ad agency there in Lansdale, and I hear all these jingling and jangling coming up behind me, you know. The maintenance guy had 50 keys on his belt. And I turn around and he says, "What you looking for, son?" And I said, "I'm in Lansdale, man. Where's that drawl coming from?" You know? And I was not in a good place at that time in my head. I was wrestling with some things, and I told him where I wanted to go. He put me on the elevator, took me up 3 floors. Elevator door opened, he pointed down the hall. He said, "Third door down there on the right-hand side, that's what you're looking for." I thanked him, started walking down the aisle there, and out of nowhere I hear him. He says, "And by the way, son, I can't say when I last seen a feller look as down in the mouth as you do. If nobody told you they loved you today, I do." And I turned around and I was like, "Where'd that come from?" He hit the stairway door and disappeared. I was so fascinated by that. I started going down to that office building, hoping I'd bump into him. I wanted to know who this guy was. And here it turns out he was in AA. He was in recovery. And, he'd been sober 2 years. I was sober a little more than a year at the time. But man, we'd go to lunch. We'd walk down Main Street in Lansdale. Horns would blow. People hanging out windows. "Hey, Jack. Hey, Jack." And the shop owners would come out and say, "Hey, there's Smiling Jack." And he couldn't read. He could only write his name. But he knew this program. So I've got a 3rd grade dropout that can't read or write on one side of me, and I've got a master's degree in engineering, was a naval officer in World War II on the other side of me. And that's what I needed. Jack could humble me in a heartbeat. He went with me one of the first times I spoke. I think it was at Horsham Clinic. After it was over, driving home, I said, "How'd I sound, Jack? You know, I sound pretty good?" He said, "Son, don't come a-hunting for a pat on the back for doing what you was supposed to have been doing all along." He was a remarkable man. In fact, I don't see it here. By the way, somehow I ended up, I'm a legitimately published author now. Like I said, sobriety, the program. I've had my work appear in 3 New York Times bestsellers. My name's appeared in 5. My work's in 6 or 7 different compilations. I've had articles published nationally as a guest columnist speaking on addiction and the result of growing up in a dysfunctional, drug-addicted or alcoholic family. And I have absolutely no training in the area other than what I learned. I'm a reader, so I'm self-taught. But the very first story I ever had published was about Jack. It's in Chicken Soup for the Prisoner's Soul. And it's titled My Best Friend Jack. And he had retired and moved back to North Carolina. And he didn't know I'd written this and I'd had it published. He came up for a visit to visit some other friends. He didn't like staying in my house. He says, "It's too goddamn hot in your house." But I went to pick him up to take him to lunch, and I said, "Well, Jack, before we go, let me come in and sit down. Remember how you told me if I stick around long enough, I'll hear somebody else tell my story?" I said, "This is unbelievable, but there's a story in this book." I said, "I'm telling you, you'd swear it's you." And we sat down in the living room and I read him the story. I'm about halfway through. And I look up and tears coming down. I said, "Now, damn you, George. What'd you do that for?" And when he finally went back home, a few days later, he flew back home. And I had sent a copy of the book to the preacher. I came from his hometown, had 400 people in it. And they had 3 Baptist churches. I sent a copy of the book to his preacher at the church he was baptized in. And when he got back that weekend, he went to service on Sunday. Preacher called him down front, sat him down in front pew, read Jack's story in front of his hometown. Jack called me up and he said, "You went and made me famous, George." But he was a remarkable man. Like I said, he couldn't read, but he knew this program like you would not believe. So I was fortunate on both sides of me. I had men who loved me, and they were more like fathers to me than anything else. And I had to bury both of them. The cancer. And, it was a horrible thing. It broke my heart. But so over the years, I've worked the program. I'm no longer powerless over alcohol. And I know people, they go, yes, but I'm following the program, and it tells me, having had a spiritual awakening, I've got something more powerful than me walking with me, or I'm walking with him. And he stands between me and the possibility of me reaching for a drink. And it says, I'm not big on quoting page numbers. I probably can. I don't want to show off. It says, having recovered, we've been given the power to help others. So we have power now. That spiritual awakening is real. I love going to the gym. I'll be 65 soon. And I love working out. I really do. I've always tried to, even through the worst days, I tried to stay in shape. But, I tell some of the young guys I sponsor, I said, if you want this, it's called maintenance. You got to keep working. And you can't go to the gym, get all the muscles you ever wanted, and then say, okay, well, that's cool, and then stop working out. You lose what you gain. And it's no different in this program. And I remember old Dave one time, he was 17 years sober, I was 2.5 years sober, and we were walking up to a church to go to a meeting, and I said, why do you still go to these meetings? You've been sober a long time. He turned around, he had a real thing about grabbing taller guys by their collars and pulling them down to his level. And he said, I go to meetings so that when bozos like you show up, there's somebody there to open the door. And he said, and don't you forget that. And I haven't. I've never walked away from this program. I'm still active. I'm not at a meeting every night, because frankly, I follow the big book. Frankly, if you've got a family, if you were at the bar every night, your kids grew up not knowing you. If you're at a meeting every night, sure, you're not drunk, but your kids don't know you. Are you practicing these principles? I have the young guys come up to me and ask me, how many meetings do you go to a week, George? And I said, I don't know, what's it say you should do in the big book? Well, it doesn't say in the big book. It says we meet often with friends. I think the word meetings is only in there one time in the first 164 pages. What I tell these young guys when they come back at me, it doesn't say. I tell them, look, as long as you have a big book and a drunk, you got a meeting. Find a drunk. Stay close to the fellowship. Have a home group. Be connected. Have people that care about you, that if they don't see you or hear from you in a few days or a week, they come looking for you. But I'm not, I got tired years ago of people going out, slipping, and coming back and say, well, I guess I wasn't going to enough meetings a week. I was going to 3 a day. How many more can you fit in? And maybe it's not the number of meetings. Maybe it's that you're not working the program. People say, I hear people say, I wasn't going to enough meetings, that's why I got drunk. And I tell them, no, you stopped working the program, so it didn't matter how many meetings you were going to. If you're not carrying the message, it's the 5th tradition, the primary purpose of the group is to carry the message. We're called to do that in the 12th step. And again, over the years, little upset, but I'm telling you, if Bill and Bob were around nowadays, I think they might be a little disappointed in the fact that there's so damn many meetings everywhere. You know, I've got the information here, up here, and some of this stuff I have where these people were lucky to get to one meeting a month and had to drive 3 hours to get to it, and 75% of them stayed sober for life because they were carrying the message in their hometowns, you know? And they were practicing the principles. The primary principle, as far as I'm concerned, personally, rigorous honesty. For years, I said, when I was working in New York, modeling, and I did some commercials and some of that nonsense too. I said I was 6 feet tall. When I got sober, I finally put down, after I went back and did it again, I'm only 5'11". You know, rigorous honesty. And nobody cared. You know? By the way, I had a lot more hair then, and I was a lot better looking. So, you know, that's how I survived. But I did go back to New York when I was 32, 33, after I'd gotten myself straightened out and my feet were firmly planted in this program and in the recovery. I went back to New York and I made amends. I had to go to like half a dozen different agents who didn't want to touch me. And I made amends. And I worked again up until I was 42, 43 years old. And I found out I could write. And if I was asked to teach a writing class, I couldn't do it because I don't know how I do it. I go to a place in my head, and there's times I come out of that place and I look at what I wrote and I go, oh, wow, this guy's good. I don't have a clue. That's sobriety. That's this program. I remember the first time I read the quote, we've found much of heaven, we've been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we've never dreamed. I cried. I'm still there. Fourth dimension, you know. This program's incredible, it's remarkable. When I started really digging deep into the program, I was looking for the holes in it, frankly. You know, first couple of years, I wasn't sure this was for me. I wasn't sure this would work for me. I wanted to find out. What are the holes? And I found them. Bill Wilson was not a saint. And I was terribly disappointed when I found that out, that the man had human flaws. You know? And old Jack's the one who said, I told him, I said, Bill Wilson, he liked women. Jack said, yeah, well, you know, him and Lois have an arrangement. I said, it's good, but bothers me. How could a man like that, he's smoking himself to death. How can a man like that come up with a program to save alcoholics? Jack looked at me and he said, God never picked saintful men to be saints. He said, look at that feller Paul. He said, till God whacked him off of that horse he was riding, he was killing Christians all over. He said, nah, he's the man that wrote most of that good book. And that put it into perspective, seriously. So maybe there's hope for us. You know, Saint me, that's not happening. But that was funny, by the way. That was, you can laugh at that. Well, again, my ex-wife isn't here, right? Yeah, I was at a meeting once, and I forget who I was sitting next to, but the guy had some time. He was very hot, very well respected. I can't remember his name, but I know he was very respected in that group. And after the speaker finished, I said, wow, this guy's impressive. He's really got it together. The guy leaned over and he said, ask his wife. He said, you'll get the truth. So, I've struggled over the years. I wrestle with depression, but I have tools available to me that I would never have realized were available if I hadn't gotten this program. Christmas Day. I was born on Thanksgiving Day. My mother, till the day she died, would introduce me to strangers. Here's my 9-pound, 1-ounce turkey. was only number 2 at 7. My brother was number 7. He was 13 pounds. She was 42 years old. And she brought him home and blamed him on me. She said, see, I told you I'd get you a brother. I was 15. She hands me the baby. I said, well, what do I do with it? Irish Catholics, you know. He was a surprise. He's 6'5", he's a doctor, and he's a psychologist, PhD, and he wants to fix me. I told him, I said, you know those books you read in college to become a doctor, a PhD? The books were about me. So you ain't teaching me nothing. But he pats me on the head, he actually pat me on the head and says, here's my little big brother. He's a good kid, no indication. Alcohol or drug behavior. I ride motorcycles. I think that goes along with the ism. There's got to be something wrong with it. I know what could happen every time I get on one. It's just like, but I still get on it. It's just like every time I picked up a drink, I knew damn well what was going to happen. But I had the mental illness of this time will be different. It was never different. So anyway, I was incredibly blessed over the years to be able to start, you know, I just found stuff. Like, let me just throw a couple things out just for, I think, just a couple of it. You know, when I talk about the history of AA, it's almost impossible for me to ignore all the temperance movements that led up to the development of AA, because Bill Wilson was well aware that there had been other attempts to find cures for alcoholics. And so I wanted to find out what they were. And I actually came across, this is probably one of the coolest things. You know, we have coins that we hand out to commemorate anniversaries. You know, just, you can take us and pass around. That's a temperance coin from the mid-1800s. And it says what it's about, you know, it's a temperance movement. Here's a newspaper article from 1904. Drunkenness is a disease and can be cured. Trust me, you wouldn't want to drink the concoction that they say will cure it. But, you know, before AA, the biggest movement, the temperance movement, was the Washingtonians, which, I don't know why it wasn't called the Baltimoreans, because it was founded in Baltimore. Yeah, they called themselves Washingtonians. And you've heard in the movies, you know, when someone quits drinking, people say, oh, he took the pledge. Well, here's the pledge from the Washingtonians. We, whose names are affixed, desirous of forming a society for our natural benefit and to guard against the pernicious practice which is injurious to our health, standing, and families. We do pledge ourselves as gentlemen not to drink any spirituous or malt liquors, wine, or cider. So they took the pledge. Unfortunately, the Washingtonians went away after, in only a few years of existence, they claimed over 600,000 members because they had no traditions. Groups were autonomous, only to an extreme. There were groups that, you notice it didn't say anything about beer here. They would have beer before the meeting started. And you laugh, but there were actually, before the traditions, there were some AA groups that started that nonsense. That was before there was an organized board in the traditions. But one of the things I learned about the different temperance movements, their entire emphasis and focus was on not drinking. When I was in the rehab, the first morning I went to group therapy, the counselor said to me, did Did you get a chance? Because the nurse pointed to the 5th chapter in a big book after she went through my suitcase. She said, read this. And he said, the counselor said, did you read that? I said, yeah. He said, what'd you think of it? And I pointed in the room where we were getting the session, counseling session. I had the steps up there. I said, they're not bad. I could fix them for you. And I said, I'm sorry you people couldn't handle your alcohol. But I'm only here for a week or so. Then they're sending me to Doylestown. But I pointed out, I said, it doesn't say anywhere on there that I have to stop drinking. Doesn't say a word about it. How can you have an organization about not drinking? And he said, because it's not about not drinking. It's about learning to live so that drinking is no longer an option. It's a positive focus. We're not here, we don't talk about not drinking. We talk about staying sober. World of difference. Look at the steps. Read in the 12 and 12, if you have the groups. Nowhere in there does it say, we're all about not drinking. We have to focus on not drinking. We focus on staying sober, living meaningful lives, being available, not to just the other people in the program, but to our families. Those of us whose families are happy that we got sober, because not all of them are. I think I was out of rehab about a month, and my father cracked the Schmitz and said, here, they teach you to drink like a man in there? I said, yeah, we get that. Even now, I have friends I grew up with, because I still have the same friends I had from the neighborhood. Say, come on, man, you haven't drank in how many years? You probably get away having one or two. And I tell them, okay, draw up a document that says you'll pay for everything that happens if I can't stop at one. They don't offer the drink. Because I tell them, maybe I could. I'm not going to risk my entire life on a maybe. And the obsession and compulsion to abuse alcohol was lifted, and I've never experienced it, and that's a blessing. But I do practice the principles of this program every day. I meditate every day. I meditate for an hour every morning. Before I don't have to go to work. I work from the house. So before I go to my office in the house, I have the luxury of spending an hour in meditation. And I started doing that at around 2 years. So I wanted to know, because how the 12 and 12 really emphasizes meditation. Well, how do you meditate? What's the magic there? So I went to the library and I looked up everything I could find about meditation. And what I learned was, because I hear it all the time, you do too. Well, I pray on my way to work. Nah, that's not when you pray. How the hell do you pray while you're driving in traffic? I think God's up there going, well, how cool are they? They're paying me my homage while they're driving in traffic. Old Jack used to say, when you go to bed at night, throw your boots under the bed. That way in the morning you got to get down on your knees to fetch them. And while you're down there, say a few prayers. And he always said, people would ask, well, how do you stay sober so long? So I thank the good Lord in the morning. When I get up, I thank him again before I go to bed. It was that simple for him. But, I had the two best examples of sobriety that anyone could ask for. I carry this message. How many in here have just struck a conversation, you were somewhere, and you just happen to be sitting on a park bench and walking your dog or whatever, and somebody sits down, or you're on an airplane, you just start shooting the breeze, and a person leans over and goes, are you a friend of Bill's? We talk a language. And and we recognize it in other people. And that's a compliment. I want to be known as a friend of Bill's. Why his wife put up with him, I'll never understand. But yeah, there's the book As Bill Sees It. I've got Lois's book over there. That's her side of it. She didn't see it the same way Bill did. So anyway, with the temperance stuff, this is one of my favorite ones. It says, "Lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours." This is in the 1800s. If you get a chance to come up after I'm done, take a look at these women. Ain't nobody wanting to kiss them anyway. Look at them. I mean, these are some pissed off women. But God bless them. They're trying to do the right thing. That's the other thing I showed here. 1866, here's one of the first rehabs. It wasn't called a rehab. It was the Inebriate Home in Fort Hamilton. This year, this is a picture of the Franklin Reformatory Home for Inebriates. It's 913 and 915 Locust Street in Philadelphia. And the entire emphasis and focus on the asylums was on finding a way to cure a spiritual malady which they didn't recognize it as being. And all they focused on was getting you to stop, just stop doing that. We'll get you healthy, we'll teach you some stuff. And then when you leave here, you won't do that anymore. If you don't treat the hole in the soul, you're going to fill it with something else. And that's the thing, I have a problem with rehabs today. 90% of drug rehabs and treatment centers use a 12-step model. But one of the things they can't do, because they're subsidized by the state and federal government, is they can't stress God. They'll take you through the 4th and 5th step, but don't talk too much about God. One of the things I recognize in the 12 steps is, it says, God as you understand him, God as you understand him. But eventually it gets to the point where it's just God, and the one you understand him as is the same one we do. I sponsored a guy years ago. He said his higher power was John Lennon. I told him, okay, he's dead. He's dead now. Not John Lennon was already dead, but this guy's dead. I said to him, you're the only one. You're going to have to start, you're going to have to rent your own church basement, because you're going to have a hard time finding group support. John Lennon. As much as I enjoyed his music, why he married Yoko, I don't get, but ruined the Beatles, right? Am I right? Some of these people are looking at me going, who's the Beatles? One thing the temperance movements all had was membership cards. Once you met the requirements, you got your official card. You could carry it with you if somebody asked. You could say, oh yeah, I'm a member. I hereby enroll with the Lincoln Lee Legion and promise with God's help to keep the following pledge. Whereas the use of intoxicating liquors as a beverage is productive of pauperism, they didn't know alcoholism, the word hadn't been invented, degradation and crime, and believing it is our duty to discourage that which produces more evil than good, we therefore pledge ourselves to abstain from the use of intoxicating liquors as a beverage. They were moving in a good direction. And even now, people who I've known after years in the program that decide they've found a better way, I tell them, fine. whatever keeps you out of a car driving drunk, trying to kill me and the people I love, I'm happy as a gopher in the soft dirt. But none of them have stayed sober. We've got a way that works. I've had people, when I take them through the steps, they say, well, my sponsor says, the way the big book says isn't the right way. My sponsor says his way is the right way. And I tell them, same thing. I'll say, well, that's fine. We can do it that way, but first we're doing it this way. I'm not going to waste my time doing your sponsor's way. You got drunk. That's why you're talking to me now. You can do all the other ways, and there are other ways for people to stay sober. Jack used to say, all you need is them first 3 steps. Jesus will save you. Funny thing was, Jack knew the program. He knew the program. He lived the program. But he was a born-again Southern Baptist. And he believed that Jesus would save him. He died sober. Never got drunk again. And when he ended up in Valley Forge before I met him, he was Sundays before, when the liquor stores and bars used to be closed, he'd go into drugstores and just stand in the aisle and drink cough syrup, aftershave. But he never took another drink. So I had great role models in this program, and one of the ways I've given some depth to my sobriety is by learning about the foundation of the program. Bill Wilson knew about the Washingtonians. He denied it in some of the interviews that he gave, but it's obvious. He got sober, him and Bob got sober in the Oxford group. Frank Buckman started the Oxford group. They called it Moral Rearmament. And he was a remarkable man. I live a half a mile from the house he was born in Pennsburg, up by Red Hill. You got Pennsburg, Red Hill, East Greenville. It's really all the same town. It's like a mile stretch. You got 3 boroughs, but Frank Buckman was born in a house about half a mile from my house. It's now an accounting firm. If you go in and talk to the lady that's the accountant and say, hey, I'm interested in Frank Buckman, she'll take you up and show you the bedroom he was born in. And without the Oxford group, there's no AA. Because that's what Bill and Bob, that's how they got sober. The Oxford group emphasized 4 absolutes. Absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute love. What's the other one? The unity. They had, Bill took the original 6 steps of AA from the Oxford group, and when he took the 12 steps to Dr. Bob, here, some of you know this, and that's fine, but I'm going to end in a second. He took the 12 steps after he wrote them. He took them to Dr. Bob and showed it to him. Dr. Bob read it. It says, here are the steps we took. Dr. Bob looked at him and said, no, we didn't. He'd never seen these before, but he recognized that the Oxford Group's 6-step program is what Bill emphasized. But Dr. Bob said to him, there's only 10 commandments. You got 12 things now we got to do, But I don't know, I just find it fascinating. And you're more than welcome to come on up here and take a look at some of this. Some of this, I actually have some signed stuff that I found. Oh wait, there's one book. I absolutely have to pass this. Is it this one? Where's the other big book? Oh, here, you absolutely have to, everybody, you have to look at this. Open it, don't show it to anybody. It's a big book. Don't show it to anybody, just close it and pass it on. It'll make sense. Now don't read it, you opened it from the front. It's upside down. It was bound originally upside down. It's the only one I've been able to find. So anyway, look, It's been great. It's been great standing up here talking to you. Come on up, take a look at some of the stuff I have. I guarantee you've never seen a lot of this before. Thanks for letting me.
Let's thank George one more time. Don't forget the meeting after the meeting. It's customary for us to form a line and thank our speakers. They come here at their own time, at their own expense. You did a magnificent job, George. I'm sorry, I kind of cut them short because we were kind of like we run out of tape. See that you would just be talking to the walls. Anyway, next week we have, I don't know, we have somebody coming in. Just check our website. We got a nice way of closing if you care to join us at Circle Up.